she's not just a politician. She really follows through. So thank you so much. Kind of feel like some of you are far away. Anyone want to come in? I feel like I want to give a speech hug with this speech. Thank you, Giles. That's okay if you don't. My name is Jason. I'm the husband of Meredith, who put this event on. As people who were here last year, she spoke last year, and I was kind of a last-minute change. We hope many of you will, in the years to come, tell your stories at this time. The most tangible impact that we can have on this disease is connecting to it on a personal level. Shortly, we'll hear talk about research. Most of us have seen and just heard my wife talk about the statistics. And in just a couple of years, we've done tremendous things, but there is so much we need to do, and we've just touched on it. I am the father of 4, but a parent of 2. My girls, Bridget and Elsie, died an hour after they were born at 24 weeks gestation on October 30th, 2007. Based on their size and weight, preeclampsia had begun ravaging Meredith and Bridget and Elsie's bodies days and weeks earlier. That morning, Meredith didn't feel right. I'm convinced that her acting on this saved her life, and I think her doctors would agree. I remember getting ready for an important meeting that day when she had called the doctor to make an appointment. Not overly concerned myself, I remember our rambunctious dog acting a bit out of sorts and kind of sheepishly following Meredith around the entire morning. Later, I remember sitting in that meeting in LA and listening to a voicemail from Meredith that she didn't feel right and she had moved up her doctor's appointment. Having been monitored at the hospital a week earlier, she was worried and wanted me there. Knowing that I can count on one hand the times my wife has made such a request of me, I left the middle of our meeting. Having carpooled to LA, the president of my company left with me and drove me back to my car in Huntington Beach. I just want to say, in an age where most of us think that dollar rules, the compassion and complete lack of hesitation he showed to leave with me, knowing that it would probably cost business, is rare, and Meredith and I both remain grateful to him and my company for that. My next stop was to pick up Thomas at his school and drop him off with my mother before heading to the doctors. On the way, it was conveyed to me that things were looking more serious and she was sent to Hoag Hospital. I believe preeclampsia was mentioned to me at that point, and that was probably the first time I distinctly remember hearing that name. Knowing I wouldn't make it there by the time she arrived, my mother immediately left to be with her at the hospital. I got to Thomas's school and was heading to Hoag, somewhat secure in the knowledge that she was receiving great medical care, and in all likelihood this meant some sort of extended bed rest. I was telling myself that there is simply a heightened risk with spontaneous twins when my cell phone rang again. I was telling myself a lot of things that day before that call came in. Meredith was on the other end, voice shaking, upset. She told me the news. She was very sick, and in the background I distinctly remember Dr. Dubiak even suggesting it was far more serious than Meredith was letting on to me. We could try for a cesarean delivery, which would give the best chance for the girls, though that may necessitate a hospital transport, or we could induce delivery, which would limit bleeding and pose the least risk to Meredith. I knew the choice I would make before Meredith finished. Even before we had kids, we had talked about a scenario that would put me in a position to decide the mother or the child. It remains my belief to choose the mother every day, regardless of the mothering instinct. Already with one child, Meredith agreed with the decision to focus on her health first. I hung up the phone and just wanted to get to the hospital. On some level, with that decision made, I thought the worst was over and begun working on putting up a strong facade for my family and my wife. I was wrong. The next several hours and days proved to be the most harrowing of our lives. It remains in my memory the personification of no control. With all the medical knowledge today, doing everything right, knowing family histories and risks, I have never felt so utterly out of control and helpless. When I saw Meredith, my mother was with her. She took Thomas out of the room and I had a few seconds with my wife. If you know me very well, I tend to be on the sarcastic side. During her pregnancy with the girls, on more than one occasion, I remarked that I was having chastity belts made. Boys would not be allowed within 100 yards of them. Often I would joke that having twins girls was God's way of getting back at me for my single days. The truth was, I relished the thought. I relished the idea of taking something as chaotic as twin girls and building a perfect life. Of being able to go to Broadway shows, watch American Idol, and having the built-in excuse, hey, anything for my girls? At that point, I broke down in front of my wife. I would have loved to have been their father. Then the doctors came in. At that point, it became clear to me that Meredith was in no way out of the woods. The number and rush of people that came into the room was something out of a movie. They were moving her into another room, and outside of her room, Dr. Dubiak first relayed to me the seriousness of the matter. She said Meredith was very sick. I asked, is she critical? Dr. Dubiak repeated, she was very sick. I took that to mean if she wasn't critical, she may have been close. Once in her room, the Pitocin drip began, and then it became an awful waiting game. At one point, Meredith was feeling faint. A nurse immediately came in to check her vitals. Her vitals were falling. The nurse paged for a crash cart. Thinking I was going to faint myself, I sat down out of the way. The nurse then yelled for the crash cart. A yell like that from an experienced medical professional was enough to make me think the worst. As the cart came in, I felt a need to somehow will my wife to health. Already feeling faint myself, I stood up. Then it went black. I awoke on the ground, bleeding, to the sounds of "Daddy down, Daddy down." Meredith's vitals had righted, and she was doing just fine, just a little bit of a fainting spell. As for my fainting, it left me with 2 cuts on my face, which required a total of 7 stitches. In retrospect, we do kind of joke about that, but it is kind of the perfect analogy about how I felt. It was as if you're in a slow-moving ship heading towards the wall at rocks with just no way to turn. Hours of thinking how it could have been, why is this happening, and how bad is this actually going to be? Eventually, Meredith delivered. The lack of reaction from the girls was sickening. Hearing the nurses call them by name was bittersweet, as they were wrapped in blankets. As we held them, I was overcome with worry that they were in pain, and wondered aloud if they should be given pain meds. I remember wanting them to pass quickly, so afraid that what little life they knew, it was excruciating. Occasionally, they would gasp for a breath that they couldn't find, and periodically a nurse would take a heart rate. In an hour, they were gone. At Hogue, when there is a loss in the delivery ward, they put up a picture, a beautiful picture of a sprig of leaves outside your hospital door. It's green, beautiful, and I guess would serve as some sort of triage symbol of sorts, so all that know who enter are aware and sensitive to what happened. The picture is simple, elegant, and pretty, and I hate that image. Walking in and out of that door, that image felt like trampling on the beautiful dreams and hopes we had as parents, the dreams our girls didn't have. The purpose of the picture is clear and good. The association to me is painful. In the 48 hours after their death, we waited for each blood test, waiting for Meredith to respond, to see that her organs were once again regaining function and their T count would begin to climb. At this point, Meredith was bruising and had very blurry vision. She was diagnosed with preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome class 1, the most severe variant. And all I could do was hope for her body to get better. There is no medical intervention to be done, but she did respond. And when we finally all left the hospital about 6 days later, we did so without our girls. At 20 weeks gestation in the state of California, death certificates are required. By law, my daughter's bodies were transported to a local mortuary where I handled the specifics in the following days. The physical trauma was extreme over the seemingly endless days, but I was lucky. Meredith survived. There are many family members here today and across the country who are not so lucky. They have lost sisters, wives, daughters, and friends. In many cases, both the child and mother survive, but preeclampsia's effects will still be felt. Survivors face increased heart disease risk and a host of lingering issues that will affect both the length and quality of life. It is a constant worry for me in regards to Meredith's ongoing health. The truth is, as much as we know about preeclampsia, we don't know enough. Preeclampsia was identified over 2,000 years ago, and it is uniquely human. In my logical brain, I believe when we really begin to understand the causes and effects of preeclampsia, it could potentially give us further insight into a host of other diseases. What mysteries could be solved if we poured more support and research into the work of the Foundation? Having a walk each year and participating in the Foundation is gratifying, therapeutic, and allows my daughters and many others to have a voice that will never speak, or can speak no more. I suppose it allows me the illusion of control, when the truth is we all have far less control in our lives than we like to think. But what we do control is where preeclampsia goes from here. The dollars this walk will raise goes to research and awareness, so I encourage all of you to speak often to others of your experiences and to continue and ask for support for the Foundation. Nonprofits often speak of the tipping point, that education, personal connection, and financial support come together to make the greatest impact. With all of your help, we can reach that tipping point for the Preeclampsia Foundation that much sooner. Thank you so much.